doing? Bob Brown again. So, I'm going to call this little video Bob's World, okay? This is just what I think we should have for arm wrestling. Make things simpler. Because as we all know, the ref's job is the hardest. Arm wrestlers don't like to leave things up to the referees. There should be very clear wins and fouls and things like that. So the first thing I do in Bob's World is I would go back. This is one of the original tables. I've had this table 30 years. It used to be in my bar downtown, which is why you can see cigarette burns on my table. I would go back to straight across pads. The reason we went to angled pads is because supposedly it lessens the number of broken arms, but after many, many years, I honestly don't believe that to be true. I mean, in theory, the angles suggest it might be true, but honestly, for simplicity, why not just have straight across pads? It just, in my opinion, makes life easier. Refs have less to do and things like that. Again, I like simplicity. Then, the parallel pin rule has always bothered me because it's so subjective. I mean, how many times have we been in an event, parallel pin gets called, the guy arm wrestling's like, no way, my arm wasn't low enough, but half the crowd says it was a pin, the other half the crowd says it's not a pin. I'm sure you all remember me getting very upset because Devin Lorette was pinned when pulling Todd Hutchins, and, as far as I'm concerned, it made a call. So here's my solution to parallel pins. Piece of cardboard. Fixes everything. This is very rudimentary, but you'll get the idea. Here's the pin pad. Here's the height of the pin pad. Here's the height of the elbow pad. Most organizations, it's a 2-inch difference in height. And between the edge of the elbow pad and the edge of the pin pad, I forget the exact distance, but I do believe it is a described distance. This table might not be perfect. This might have to be a little further out. I'm not sure. But let's assume if I went whatever half the distance is and I extended the elbow pad at a downward angle towards the elbow pad at the angle that you would go from the pin pad to the elbow pad. Then halfway, have it go straight down. So in essence, the pin pad is going to look a little different, okay, at a downward angle. Now, get rid of the rule. Parallel pins, they don't exist anymore. You must hit the pad. So if two guys are arm wrestling and they end up right here, well, the match just keeps going because no one's hit the pad. And quite frankly, that's the rule now. In the WAF, any pin between the two elbow pads, now, the elbow pads are on an angle, but any pin, any going below the parallel pin line between the elbow pads, the match, there's no winner. The match just keeps going. Somebody has to get here over to the outside of the pad. You have to move from here to at least your side of the elbow pad. In case you guys didn't know that, you've got parallel pins that come straight down here, and people were like, call it. Or, well, here's what's really crazy, and this happened 20 years ago. Let's imagine you're so flexible that you've dumped the guy's hand back, right? So he's like this, and you're like this, and you're bringing him down, and he, with his arm, brings you across the table. So now all of a sudden, you're on top over here in the losing position, and he's, bent underneath you. If those hands go parallel, the guy in the winning position just pinned himself. And there's a lot of people that don't know that. Again, you got my hand busted back, okay, but I've got the power to come over here, and my hand is so flexible it's bending backwards, and we go down here, even though you're on top, you lose that match. You pinned yourself. Which is why they came up with the rule, you must pin your competitor on your side of the table. That's rule. So anything in here, that match just keeps going. I say let's get rid of that rule. The whole reason that rule came into existence in the first place is because legitimately there were people with shorter arms, and when they would go down, their arm just wasn't long enough to reach over to here to hit the pad. So let's bring the pad at a downward angle inside. So now, if you bring me to where a traditional parallel pin would take place, I've got to touch the pad. And not only do I have to touch the pad, this pad is roughly about a half an inch or so, I mean, I'd have to measure it, lower than here. So if you're anywhere in the parallel zone, you got to be buried, which should be fine because the original reason was because you had a shorter arm. Now, of course, the whole world has morphed, and people are now parallel pinning. Once they get a finger bent back, they'll come straight down, and the way we parallel people is a little different now. But the whole reason is because the arm was short. So I think this solves that problem. Now there's no such thing as parallel pin, and all pins just you have to touch. Period. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment.